Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Welcome, everyone, to the podcast we call Wines We Drink. I'm Charlotte Varnum, and as is every week during the summer, I am joined by my co-host and certified wine sommelier, Keith Herndon.
Thank you, Charlotte, and a warm welcome to all of our listeners. You know, we love bringing you our summer wine show and appreciate all of our listener support. You are joining us today for our 8th episode of Season 5, and we're recording today in my wine kitchen, which I like to call my happy place.
And I can easily see why this is your happy place. You've got this basement area tricked out for wine. I mean, there are racks and racks, 3 refrigerators, a humidity control system. I mean, you're really doing it right.
Well, I must say its best use is our recording studio.
Yep.
And it's hard to believe that we're here for number 8. I mean, the summer is really moving along.
I know. It makes me feel kind of sad, actually. But if you missed last week's episode, you can find it along with all of our other previous episodes from this season and our previous seasons on most of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We also have an episode guide for your convenience at wineswedrink.com, and we're on Instagram at The Wines We Drink.
So let's turn our attention and discussion to the wine we're featuring today. We got the season off and running with some fabulous whites, a pink sparkler, and a champagne. And last week we kicked off our lineup of reds with an amazing Shiraz. It was actually from Morocco, but made in the old world style. Right, a really fabulous wine it was.
Oh, absolutely. It was very unique. I can't say I've ever had a wine from Morocco, and I doubt that many of our listeners have either. So please tell our listeners what we have for them today.
Well, this is unusual for us, but we're sticking with the same varietal.
Okay.
But today's wine goes by a different name. We're opening a bottle of Shiraz from Australia's Barossa Valley.
So same varietals last week under a different name.
Charlotte, yes, Syrah and Shiraz are the same grape. Horticulturists and botanists have learned through DNA that they're one and the same. But sharing the same DNA only goes so far, right? A Syrah like the one we had last week, made in the French Old World style, exhibits nice acidity and firm tannins. We use the word elegant to describe it, right? This grape made in a New World style under the name Shiraz will typically present with riper fruit, softer tannins, and just an overall lusher texture. I've heard it described this way by comparing the grape to a musical instrument, right? It can be played in different styles, right? In this analogy, Syrah would be a violin, while Shiraz is a fiddle.
I love that analogy every time you use it.
Well, I do have a few of them I use over and over.
Well, let's dig into Shiraz then. How did Syrah become Shiraz in Australia?
Well, you know, it's an interesting story there. A man named James Busby, who some call the father of Australian viticulture, brought the vines to Australia from France in the 1830s. Although most viticulturists now recognize the ancestral home of Syrah as the northern Rhône area of France, at the time Busby was making some journal entries, he attributed their origin to Shiraz and Persia. So over time, that name became associated with this varietal in Australia. Kind of a misunderstanding of of the heritage there.
A little bit of lost in translation. You know, it's fascinating to learn a bit of the history behind this grape and its journey, how it made it all the way to Australia.
Well, I do enjoy engaging with wine history, but not as much as actually engaging with the wine itself, right?
Okay, then, let's get started. It's time to taste an Australian Shiraz.
Well, there are a lot to choose from. And even within Australia, the styles of the wine can be quite different. I mean, a lot of the wineries in the Margaret River in Western Australia, for example, produce a much more refined, elegant version that is much closer to the French Northern Rhône style. When I drink an Australian Shiraz, though, I want that New World edge. So today's selection, as I mentioned earlier, is from the Barossa Valley. This area is known for Shiraz with a rich, powerful style complete with those dark fruit flavors.
Man, powerful style. That sounds wonderful. So let's please pour us some of this powerful wine.
Yeah, happy to oblige. Okay, Charlotte, I'm going to pour this into our glass.
Wow, look at that.
Okay, very, very nice color. Very nice color. Okay, so this is a 2020 Shiraz from John Duval Wines. This particular bottle is sold under the Entity label. I feel this wine needs at least an hour in the decanter to unwind and open up a bit. So I had it in a completely flat-bottom decanter. You know, I want this wine to fully express its aromas and flavors. So, you know, it's been in the decanter while we've been talking. And I had it there even before we started recording today's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And that takes a little bit of some preparation when you're thinking about preparing to enjoy this wine. But I can already tell you that was well worth it just on the smell alone. And you can't help but notice, you were talking about the great color. It was sitting there in the decanter, and as you poured it out, it really captured the light there in the room. It's an inky, purpley wine.
That's a great description. You know, when I see this wine in the decanter and then in the glass, I always think that is exactly what I want my Shiraz to look like. You know, that inky purple as you described it. It's what I'm looking for before I want to take that first sip. For Shiraz, you want that really luscious, rich looking grape. So before we sip though, let's take in the aromas. So give it a good smell. What are you getting there?
Yeah. You know, lots of blueberries, I would say, and some pronounced dark chocolate. I mean, very specifically, there is a dried blueberry dark chocolate that I love to get from the store, and it's very reminiscent of that. And it's kind of like it's like a wine candy. It's what it reminds me of.
You know, bingo. You know, often at Christmas, my wife buys these packs of dried blueberry and chocolate candies from Harry and David's.
Okay. See?
You know, this wine smells just like opening one of those packs.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Amazing. Let's just go in for a taste.
Okay. Here we go.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Right.
before I even talk about the flavors, I just have to comment on how smooth this wine is. From its color, I was really expecting a tannin bomb. You were talking about power, and so I was fully preparing for that. But this is a smooth and almost velvety presentation, I would say.
Yeah. So along with that smooth texture, on that first sip, are you getting any fruit notes that stand out for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of the dark fruits are here today. They've all shown up to the party. We've got blackberry, black cherry, black currant. I mentioned blueberry earlier. I'm going to have another sip.
Yeah. It's just a wonderfully complex, fruity wine. Now let's concentrate on the finish.
Right.
Last week's Syrah finished with pepper notes, but not this one.
Yeah, that's a great observation. This wine has some spice notes at the finish, but it's not peppery.
I think that those spice notes that you mentioned, there's some herbal qualities, but as I drink this wine and my palate gets comfortable with it, you know, I settle in on jammy. You know, there's fig and raisin notes, and I'm just going to describe this as something from my youth. Molasses.
Yeah. I would say that that's exactly right. I mean, all of those layers just unfold as it sets on the tongue, doesn't it?
Yes, I think this is a beautiful example of a Barossa Valley wine, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. A review of this vintage from the Wine Advocate said it reflected, quote, quintessential Barossa terroir, end quote, adding that, quote, the wine speaks of place, end quote.
That's a great quote. I mean, I love what we've done these past 2 weeks with this varietal. You know, last week we had a Syrah from Morocco, of all places, that was definitely produced in the French Old World style. Today we've got this Australian Shiraz that is all but showing off its New World personality. They may share the same DNA, but they are entirely different wines in the glass.
Yes, you know, I really like the vibrancy today's wine provides. And I'm not talking about its alcohol by volume, although that checks in at 14.5%.
Yeah.
No, what I mean is this wine is not afraid to be robust. It's not afraid to be intense. It doesn't have to be elegant to be delicious.
Absolutely. Right. So let's talk about how we would pair this Shiraz with food.
Right. If we were recording this episode in the winter, I'd recommend this with a hearty roast beef stew.
Yum.
Right? But since we're recording in the summer, this wine is an exceptional complement to that beef brisket you may have on the grill, right? But I think it's somewhat versatile. You don't have to limit yourself to thinking only about beef. Try it with a barbecue chicken pizza or even an eggplant lasagna can work well for this wine.
All of those are so wonderful. I think that barbecue chicken pizza idea is the one that's speaking most to me. What about a cheese pairing?
Well, I'm going to keep this simple. Cheddar.
Yep.
Right? A bold cheddar will offer a nice counterpoint to the wine's fruitiness and tannins. I mean, that cheese will also break down quickly and complement the wine's velvety texture. We have some cheddar slices here for us to try with the wine, so let's get started on that.
Let's do it. I see exactly what you mean. The sharpness of the cheddar works so nicely here. It's a robust cheese, and that's really needed so that it doesn't get lost with this intense wine. You're right about the texture as well. As you eat, it creates this creamy texture that works really well with the wine. Very good.
Yeah. So let's talk about this wine's price to quality ratio, as I like to call it. Right?
Yeah. I mean, we understand that price isn't always the deciding factor on deciding which wine to buy, but it certainly helps when you know that you're getting a wine where the quality justifies the price that you're paying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think today's wine falls in the range that I call moderately priced. Both the Vivino app and Wine Searcher list the average price for this vintage at $37.
Okay.
Right? Not cheap, but not overly expensive either. I mean, after all, we had some really nice champagne back in episode 6, right?
A little triple figure, yeah.
Right. But when you consider this wine is listed on the Vivino app as among the top 2% of all wines in the world, you may not mind paying, around $35 to $40 for this bottle. Wine Spectator gave it 94 points. And Wine Enthusiast gave it 93 points. I really believe the bottle is worth its price when you consider the price to quality ratio.
Right, which is, what brings us back to the advice that we give our listeners a lot, which is looking past the label and doing some research can really help you feel better about those purchasing decisions and feel more excited by them too. So, but today we're drinking the 2020. Is that still widely available?
Great question. There was still some 2020 in the channel at the time of our recording, but if you can't find this vintage, don't sweat it. Go for whichever John Deval entity Shiraz you can find. Every vintage over the past decade has at least 4 stars on the Vivino app. Wine Enthusiast noted that overall the 2020 vintage wasn't one of the Barossa Valley's even best years.
Wow.
Right? Very dry conditions created low yields and challenges. But this winery knows what it's doing, and it consistently turns out great wine, even in years when nature may throw them a curveball. So we're drinking 2020, but if there's a 2022, 2023, go for it.
Go for it, yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a short break and continue enjoying some cheddar and Shiraz. We'll be back shortly with the segment of the show that we call The Finish. Welcome back to our show, Wines We Drink. This is the portion of the show we call The Finish. Today, Keith is going to dive into that pesky wine question. Corks versus screw caps, which is better?
Well, Charlotte, what we haven't mentioned on today's show so far is that we have used our book, Wine Conversations, Exploring Meaning, Mystery, and Myth, as the foundation of our podcast episodes this season, right? And even if like today, the wine we featured isn't mentioned directly in the book still served as our inspiration, right?
Right.
Today's wine, our Shiraz, comes in a bottle with a screw cap. I chose it specifically as an example of this debate, which is talked about in more than one of the interviews featured in the book.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a red wine, I feel like this is a very interesting conversation to be having today. So let's get right to the heart of the issue. Is a cork better? Is a screw cap inferior? What is your take?
Well, rather than me answering those questions, we're going to go straight to a couple of the experts featured in the book. First, let's hear a brief clip from Chelsea Young, a certified sommelier who's the founder and lead educator at the Oenophile Institute. What's your answer when someone says screw top or cork?
Okay, so ironically enough, I had to write a dissertation on that exact subject. So I feel very strongly about it. Um, I'm a firm believer that, now that like cork taint's not an issue, cork is overall, if you're trying to age a bottle of wine, natural cork is 100% the best way to go. It's like 90% of wine isn't meant to age anyway. So why aren't we selling everything under a screw cap that's meant to be consumed in a year and saving the natural cork resources for wine that is meant to be aged? I don't personally have a preference. I know there's like the whole romantic notion of like the actual opening of a cork bottle and everybody's stuck on that. And I get it. But there's plenty of really fantastic wine that's under a screw cap.
So later in her interview, Chelsea acknowledged, quote, the whole romantic notion of the actual opening of a cork bottle, end quote, but maintained that aside from some age-worthy wines, a cork just isn't necessary.
Well, and we mentioned this too with the whole Gen Z debate, right? And making wine accessible. It's pretty interesting. Does science have anything to say about this, though?
Well, that's a great segue into our next expert interview. We talked with Dr. Christian Butsky, a professor of enology and food science at Purdue University. Let's listen to a brief excerpt from that interview.
So wine does not need corks to breathe or live or do anything. The vast majority of wine aging reactions is independent of oxygen, and certainly the amount of oxygen or air that goes through the cork is varying quite a bit. So there's really no truth to that corks are necessary to make great wine, and that we have proven. We have proven that with very expensive wines. We've proven that just in general.
I don't know. That seems pretty definitive.
Yes. Dr. Butsky said it's understandable that cork manufacturers have an interest in perpetuating the myth that corks are necessary for a good wine. But science just doesn't back that up. Mm-hmm. Like Chelsea, he admitted there is a ritual associated with corks. As he put it, quote, everybody likes pulling a cork out of the bottle. It makes it special, end quote. But it doesn't make the wine any better, and our Shiraz today is a testament to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that ties into the fact that wine is accessible, and you don't have to listen to Big Cork to have a delicious wine with a good screw cap. So, I mean, I guess case closed, right? Screw tops are fine.
Absolutely, and that ties back to some of our previous conversations this summer. We need to make wine less pretentious if we want to engage a younger consumer. And one way to do that is to educate them that a wine with a screw cap is not less than.
And then that's a great point. So again, I think it's important and valuable to just double underline that and to enjoy, to seek out even those screw caps. If you liked these interviews and you'd like to read them in their entirety, along with 14 other great interviews with wine experts, you could buy Wine Conversations on Amazon or through our local distributor, Neighborhood Books. The purchase links and all of the info are at our website, wineswedrink.com.
Charlotte, thank you again for plugging the book. Nothing wrong with a shameless plug, right?
No.
It was great having you along as editor on that book. You did such a fantastic job. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was a fun project, and we are back as a team again next week. Can you give the audience a hint about our plans for next episode?
Our wine next week is again inspired by one of the interviews from the book, a pioneering grape grower who is partial to Zinfandel from a very special place. Okay? Mm-hmm. And, listeners, Chef Charlotte is back with another fantastic food pairing. Until next week, cheers!
Yes, next week's wine is amazing. I can't wait to share my pairing with everyone. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.